Aloha, guys. This is Jason from Hawaii. I'm here with Josh Werner, one of the original founding member of Source Point Press, the Chief Creative Officer and Art Director. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you very much. Before we begin, I want to say thank you very much for, arranging the interview, for letting me interview Howard Wong and Josh Stafford, the writers of Damn Cursed Children. That's a great comic. That's a great comic book series. It is. I've read the first issue. I got the second one on my reading stack, but thank you very much. Yeah. So before we continue, Josh, where can listeners follow you and Source Point Press on your social medias?
Sure. So you can find me at me personally at Joshua Frantic on Twitter and Instagram. I don't use Facebook very much, but Source Point, we are on Facebook very heavily at Source Point Press, at Source Point Press on Instagram, and at Source PT Press on Twitter. And we're very, very active, both myself and Source Point on Twitter. So that's a really good place if you want to interact and be able to, talk to us in real time. You can usually find us pretty active there. And we love comments and feedback and questions. And we love when people send pictures of the books that they've gotten and, what they enjoyed. And even if you didn't enjoy it, we want to hear it. So yeah, hit us up anytime.
Okay, thank you. All right. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up just north of Detroit in Michigan. And now I live in Saginaw, Michigan, which for anybody who doesn't know, this is only going to be audio, but you can hold up your hand and make the shape of the state. And I started off in the southern thumb area, and now I'm kind of up to that weird little webbing between your thumb and your first pointer finger.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you remember what was your first comic that you read?
Oh, that's a great question. So I didn't have a comic book store near me, but there was a party store that had a spinner rack, one of those kids' comic spinner racks. And I think one of the first ones that I picked up from a store was a Silver Surfer comic. And I had no context, no clue, just knew that it had this cool embossed holographic foil Silver Surfer on the cover. And I fell in love. And then from there, my sister had been reading Archie comics, and she was older than me. And every single new comic that she finished, I would sneak into her room and nab it and take it to my room and read it. And then from there, I ended up getting just boxes from flea markets of old Donald Duck comics and Mickey Mouse comics and things like that as a kid. And yeah, it totally sparked it. And I continued straight through reading comics to this day.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, this question is from Drew. He's the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit. Do you remember your first LCS?
So it was about a half an hour away from my house. It was the closest one to me. And it was called Taurus Comics. I don't believe they're around anymore, but it was in Port Huron, Michigan. And I just remember it being such a special experience. I would go there about twice a month and just look for, any kind of series I could pick up. And that's when I just tried new things and discovered new things and kind of, fell in love with the Marvel universe and tried out the original Dragon Ball manga in single issues. All that stuff kind of just deep dove into that store. And that just gave me a love and appreciation for comic book retailers and what they do and their struggles. And to this day, a big part of what I do is in hopes of supporting them and making sure that we keep those shops alive.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay, now how did your journey into the comic book industry begin?
So in college, I got a major in what we called communication arts, but basically it was illustration. And I was doing primarily traditional illustration meant for marketing, for advertising, for illustrations, spot illustrations for novels. I was doing a lot of stuff for magazines. And one thing I had learned in college was whatever you do, don't go into comics.
Yeah.
originally went to art school with the intention of working in comics. And basically everyone in art school was like, don't do that. Fine, there's plenty of other illustration gigs in the world. And then I switched schools halfway through to a different college, and because a lot of the instructors were comic book artists and writers. And Timothy Truman became one of my instructors. He is an absolute legend. He wrote a lot and illustrated Conan the Barbarian, Scout, Turok, the Dinosaur Hunter, just absolute legend. And I became friends with him and his family. They would invite me over for dinner, and I watched him work in his studio, and he would be traditionally painting these big Conan the Barbarian pages. And I just knew that there was no way I was going to stay out of comics. I was going to, at some point, end up in comics because it was just impossible not to. When I graduated, I was primarily doing work for bands. I was doing a lot of album covers for like foreign death metal bands. And I started doing t-shirts for bands. And with all the freelancing for t-shirts, that ended up leading me to a full-time fashion design gig where I would originally been hired to do artwork for t-shirts because I understood how to translate traditional art into screen printing, which is not easy. Not every artist knows how to break down the screens exactly the way that the printer would need. And that ended up somehow leading me down a really interesting path towards I had a denim line, and I designed shoes for a little bit. I did a ton of jackets, and I ended up working with a lot of celebrities making custom jackets for them. And somehow in the midst of all that, I was still freelancing little bits into the publishing industry, mostly doing illustrations for prose novels and book covers. And that's when I met Gary Reed. Gary Reed was the founder of Caliber Comics and a legendary writer in his own right, written well over 100 publications, just a phenomenal person. And he kind of launched the careers of so many big names in the industry these days. And he, something about me, he liked, and he was using me for, at this time, Caliber Comics had ended, but was about to start up again. And he, in the meantime, co-owned a company called Binary. And a company that I'm still heavily actually involved in to this day. I was doing freelance for Gary for Binary, doing pre-press and graphic design and things like that. Sometimes cleaning up old pages and laying out books and doing logos. And then he wanted to try out some of my illustration work. So he landed me a gig briefly for some Dead World stuff, while Dead World, one of his hit titles, was at IDW. I was doing side illustrations used for other marketing purposes and for trading cards and things like that. And I kind of fell in love with Dead World, and he would throw me little things here and there where I could kind of keep me in the Dead World universe after that along the way. And then we started a company called Caprice Brands, where we started a soda line just for Dead World Zombie Soda. And now at this point, I'm still not working in comics, but I'm getting very close to. And after that, he brought Caliber back, and I helped in a lot of ways, just doing whatever I could, a lot of new book covers. And he said, at this point, I had just met Trico Lutkins. He was a writer who was doing a lot of prose and wanted to shift into comics. And he wanted to hire me to do illustrated comic. And I said, well, how do you plan to publish this? Do you have anybody you want to pitch it to? What's your ideal publisher? And after a lot of talking, him and I decided to self-publish it. But I said, I've been watching Gary Reed. I've been learning a lot about publishing. I've been working for a lot of publishers. I think we could make this more than just self-published. I think we could start a little publishing company. And so we formed SourcePoint Press in late 2012. And that grew way faster than I expected. Even in that first year, we put out over a dozen publications, and we did a split. It was about 50-50 prose books and comics and graphic novels. And Gary, I'd come to him for advice and saying, like, I want to start this publishing company. I'm in over my head. What am I doing? Trico is here with me doing it, but he also doesn't know anything about starting a publishing company. And his advice was, don't do it. And then he's like, "You're gonna do it anyway, aren't you?" Yeah. He's like, "Okay." So he did. He gave me a lot of great advice that I still follow to this day, and it kind of rolled from there. It grew. Travis McIntyre came on and became our CEO a few years later. And that's when we really started like upping the game. Trico was no longer involved much later after that. Travis and I kind of grew the company into what it is from that point. And Gary, for a while, I was doing a lot of stuff for Caliber because Gary agreed to write a series for us at SourcePoint, not at Caliber.
Okay.
And in exchange, I had like a little debt to work off to him at Caliber, which I would have done anyway. So he threw me a bunch of book covers and things like that. And then when issue 2 of his series that he was doing for us had just come out, we were at a convention together, sharing a table in Boston. We had a great weekend. We had a great time. We drove home, and 2 days later, he passed away. Very, very unexpectedly. It was a huge shock to us and to the entire industry. I mean, that was a heck of a funeral, let me tell you. He was just a beloved man in this industry. And we do our best to kind of follow in his footsteps and what he did in this industry and raising up like smaller voices in the industry and giving them a platform.
Yes.
And that's, as long as we're doing that and continuing to do that, then I know that comics is where I belong.
Yes.
And that I'm on the right path.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
I think I answered your question. That was a little long-winded. Sorry.
Josh, that was really great. When you started up SourcePoint Press, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said in 2012?
Yeah. So I think our first comic was we actually came out in 2013, but we were working on them in 2012, and we had like started the social media pages, and I designed the logo, and we made like a press release announcement about the company. Yeah.
Okay. Now, was it is it SourcePoint Press? Basically, I'm just asking. Your headquarters is in Michigan. Correct me if I'm wrong. Michigan.
Yes. So it kind of started off at my kitchen table, closer to Detroit, but then a couple years ago, we started trying to localize it here in Saginaw, which is a couple hours north, and we eventually opened. We took over the back room of a comic book shop. So that was how we started.
Okay.
So like they had a back room that had a bunch of extra space, and we needed a place for all these mountains of books that we were printing. And so they moved their stuff out of the back room, and we took over that. And that became our first quote unquote warehouse.
Yes.
From that point, it grew.
Yes.
The same building is actually a plaza of multiple businesses. We took over the entire business behind their shop.
Okay.
And that became our office and warehouse. And then I was driving back and forth a couple hours. And Travis lives in Midland, which is closer to here. It's about 40 minutes away. Okay. So I would stay at his house a few nights a week and then drive here to be at the office. And we only had a couple employees, but it was a way for us to pack boxes and answer emails and design stuff and then pack boxes. And the next thing you knew, we'd grown into the business next to that, and we took over another business in the same plaza, and wrapped around that. And then the office area just became pure warehouse because we needed more and more space for our books. And we at this point had grown into more than a comic book company. We published board games as well. So that takes over a ton. Our board game arm called Deepwater Games requires a lot of warehousing. And now we are the biggest thing in this plaza. We have a big snaking, like a Tetris L shape, basically. Yes. And we wrap all the way around the comic book store that we originally started in the back room of. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go back. So you guys started off basically behind a comic book store. Were you guys selling in 2013, were you guys selling your comics locally, or did you guys no, let's go national, or did you guys slowly start off?
It was very slow. We started it was very local. It was all like, it was small print runs in 2013. We were doing comic book store signings in Michigan and started doing convention appearances. And in 2014, we started going out of state. In 2015, we really kicked things off with Travis, and we started doing much bigger, high-profile conventions. And then by 2017, we still didn't have proper distribution, surprisingly, but we were selling really high numbers of our comics, just hand sales. And our web store had started really kind of taking off, and we were moving a lot of product literally by driving places and meeting people and shaking hands and signing books and taking all the creators on the road with us. By 2019, we were doing 75 conventions in a single year, which meant sometimes being in 4 places in one weekend, because there's only so many weekends in the year. So we really tapped out our resources. It became a logistics game of how many vehicles do we have we can use? Who has this banner? I have this banner. Okay, you have all the boxes. Oh my gosh, like that writer is in California right now, but we accidentally took all of his books over to Boston. Tons of just logistics of like getting creators and product spread out. And by that time we finally got Diamond Comic Distribution, and at one point they couldn't ignore us anymore, because we had set up a booth across from them at a convention, and they had to sit all weekend and watch us. We had this monster house booth. It was huge. We had a dozen creators signing autographs, and books were flying off the shelf all weekend, and they were going, who are these people? Because we had just gotten so good at traveling constantly every weekend, and just really good at connecting with people, and getting them excited about the product. And we had, at this point, we'd done enough shows consecutively year after year that people expected us and were looking forward to us being in their city. And we kind of became like a punk band that never stops going on tour. It's kind of pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That's awesome.
Because it's not the way other publishers start. A lot of them get like a big cash influx, and they immediately get their distribution, and they get their business model, and they get an investment, and then they have to make their business plan work. That wasn't us at all. We were very grassroots. And I love it when you said that at one convention, you guys are just right across from Diamond. And no choice but to stare at us.
I'm just asking, like I said, I'm going a little off the cuff. So during that time, did anyone from Diamond walk over to you guys and go, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. Can we meet with you guys and talk?" Or can you talk about that? I want to hear that fun story of how did you guys get into Diamond?
So at this time we had been trying to the thing with Diamond, and they're friends and partners of ours, of course, but at this time the person in charge of the submissions, their job is essentially to kind of they're full up. They've got a massive catalog this thick. They've got so many people in it, and there's these little tiny companies that come and go and die and only last like a couple of years. They don't have the manpower and effort to give all of them a platform just to have them fail and then recycle over and over and over again. They have brand managers that are assigned to each one of these publishers. So you really do have to prove yourself in your longevity as a publisher to be able to start off in previews. So we had been rejected 27 times, I think, by this point. We had sent in 27 submissions, and we'd done everything. We tailored because I wanted feedback for every rejection. Like, why did you not like it? What is the problem? And it was always something different. It was like, the MSRP is too high. The MSRP is too low. The page count is a little off. Maybe this would be better as an ongoing series. No, this one's better as a graphic novel. So we would keep changing and adjusting and following all these, and then we would find a new reason to get rejected. And then finally, a friend of ours now at the time, he was working for their gaming division, Alliance, and he came over and was looking at the books, and he's like, man, these would make some great board games. And little did he know, we were developing a board game company at the time. And he's like, man, these would all make such great board games. And and he's like, how are these doing in the catalog? And I said, what catalog? He's like, previews in our catalog. I said, they're not in your catalog. He's like, what about this one? And I was like, that one, I said, no, none of these. None. And we had about 40 titles on the table at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, none of these are in previews. And he said, how are you guys making it without distribution? Who's your comic book distributor? I'm like, no, we're doing it ourselves. And at this point we were, cold calling stores, and we had, deals we were working out directly with them, which is not something a distributor particularly wants. That's something that they want to be part of. Yeah. So, and of course they can do it better. They are a distributor. So he was flabbergasted. And I said, Josh Jeppy, I believe he's the president of the company, is the son of Steve, the owner of Diamond Comic Distributors and all of their subsidiary companies. He was going to be at the booth that day, sitting next to Rich Ankney. And I said, when Josh comes, all I ask is that you nudge him and go, hey, keep an eye on this booth.
Yes.
Because I knew we were just going to slay. And that was how we actually got their attention, and they started really kind of talking to us. And then we had a sit down dinner with Josh, and Travis and Josh got together, and yeah, it was after that the gates were open, and they were really excited to have us on board, and they've been just wonderful partners ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that is incredible. I mean, yeah, that's incredible. You guys get all these rejection letters telling you, do this, no, do this, do this. And then you guys are at one convention and it's like, no, here, we are showing you we can do this.
Yeah, the proof was in the sales that weekend, I guess.
I mean, that's great. That's a great story. It is. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay, so you've covered how Source Point Press started. Let's see. I'm going to ask, as a chief creative officer, help me to understand, what are your duties as a chief creative officer?
So one of the things I was, in starting this company, one of the things I was really bad at was the business side of things. I was always interested in the creative side of things, and creative marketing and branding, and developing the identity of who we are and what we do. And everything beyond that was kind of a mystery to me, and I was just fumbling my way through it. Luckily, Travis is a phenomenal partner, and Travis is a phenomenal businessman, and he was able to kind of take over the reins on that, which meant that I was able to eventually settle into a job role at a company instead of trying to make this work alone, or with Trico in the early days. And this has been great for me because I get to kind of flex all the things that I'm good at, and I get to work with some of the coolest and most creative minds in the industry. So a lot of what I do on a day-to-day is I get to kind of project manage comic books from start to finish. I get to be a part of the creative process and step in and give my 2 cents. And I look over, I spend a lot of my time looking over people's files and arts, and helping them become better artists, really, in not so much in their drawing abilities and skill set, but in their technical proficiency, saying like, we need to clean these pages up, and let me show you how a better way to do this. We need to get better scans of this. You're doing the wrong proportions. Let me give you some templates that I made, things like that. And we help them kind of get on a road to being able to do this quicker and more efficiently, because unfortunately comics are such a low paying gig that there's no time to waste. It's like, you got to do it right the first time and keep moving.
Yes.
So I spend a lot of time doing that, but I also, I jump in wherever necessary, because I'm technically capable of doing any of the steps. So if I need to edit a script, I do. If we have a book that doesn't have a letterer and we're in a pinch, I will do the lettering myself. Sometimes I even do colors or covers or things like that. But most of the time, it's spent doing pre-press and prepping and working with the printers and the factories and figuring out costs and comparisons, and looking at quality and papers and doing all that technical stuff, which I also kind of enjoy. A lot of that comes back to all the fashion design experience I did. During the time as a fashion designer, I traveled the world And I met with so many factories, and I looked at all their capabilities, and I created all these relationships. And you were able to think outside the manufacturing box. Most people think, okay, I need a factory that can do everything that I need to do, and I need to go there and show them what I want, and then they create it, and then I take it home. And I went, well, what if we just did this portion here? Or what if you guys tried using that, which you usually use for a totally different product, and we did this instead with it? And just think outside the box and work with them, and they get excited. And manufacturers kind of love that creativity when they know that you are worth their time and that you're going to provide business. And so I kind of bring some of that to printing, where I start looking at different options and saying, well, I like your spot finish over here. I like their cover stock. Maybe I can talk to the paper supplier, and we can start pulling their cover stock over to this business, things like that. So it's a little bit boring sometimes, but I do get the fun of being the first person to see artwork, come in every day. I get original pages sent to me sometimes. And I get to be the first person to look over all these pages and read all these books, and that passion has not gone away. So every day is like Christmas, opening up a little package,
Cool. That is. Josh, it sounds like what you're doing is great, because it sounds like the chief creative officer, that's where your strength lies. And what's great, I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of regurgitating stuff, but what's really great is that you're looking at strengths of what people can do, or what parts, companies can do to make to bring a comic book together, instead of going, you're going to do all this, in one, it's like a one-stop shop type deal. But you're looking at, no, let's look across the board. It's a team building effort of making a comic.
So true. Comic books are so collaborative. One of the great things about this is that I end up just, over time, I've worked with artists who are fun and reliable, writers who are incredibly talented and have some great ideas, and they need to be paired together. So on occasions, I'll get pitches for concepts, or we will, as a company, we'll get a lot of pitches that are like, we don't have our team assembled, but this is what we'd like to do, and this is the direction we're taking. And I'm able to kind of help and say, I have the perfect person for this. Most recently, we started a comic book series, started publishing a comic book series here called Cult of Dracula, and it has already taken off. We were blown away by the reaction to issue 1, which is hitting stores at the end of this month, but the pre-orders were just overwhelming. People are so excited for this series. And right in the middle of it, the artist came down with COVID. He had to leave the project because he became so ill and hospitalized. And we were in a pinch where the next issue, to be able to stay on the schedule, it had to be done within 30 days. And we had no artist. I was able to step in, and I was able to bring in an artist that I'd been dying to work with anyway. He was the perfect fit for the project, and the project will continue to go on in the style and vein that the original artist had began. And we're just as excited about it, and we're hoping the fans will be too. And it's like, I'm so glad to have that network of people where I can kind of tag somebody in and say, I have a writer with an amazing project, and I think you're perfect for it. And it's super exciting. I went from being a freelance illustrator myself and doing art myself, and now majority of my time is spent kind of curating other people's work and helping kind of lift them up and guide them along. And a lot of people, they will ask along the way if I find it as rewarding as seeing my own work out there. And the answer is yes, absolutely. I love it. I love it. I know that all these people who are kind of getting this recognition they deserve, that like a little piece of me is kind of in all those books, and I each one is like my baby, and I get to kind of watch it grow up and get its own legs and walk around and stuff.
That's pretty cool. Let's see. Let's see. At Source Point Press, it sounds like you wear many hats. Can you talk about those other hats that you wear? I know one of them is, correct me if I'm wrong, as I said at the top of the interview, is that art director, correct?
Yes. So sometimes art direction can be tricky because it's a very it can be, it's hard to be objective. I mean, art, everybody feels differently about artwork. So I try to keep a very open mind, and I don't, if I personally don't like a particular art style, I try not to let that affect things. I try to look at the market, look at this art style's place in it, its audience. Quality is always going to be quality, and you can tell. You know, there's a, you know, minimalistic styles that are just as high quality as ultra detailed styles.
Yes.
And so that's a tricky line to walk. But one of the things I do get to have kind of a bigger say in, or that I will allow myself to have a bigger say in, is just quality-based things like lettering. Lettering's a big one. I'm a stickler for lettering. If a book is just absolutely beautiful and the lettering does not come off professional, it can just wreck the reader's experience and can definitely wreck the sales. So sometimes I'll pull in letterers that I'm very fond of and work with regularly to kind of redo lettering for certain projects. Logos, I end up doing a lot of the logos for the books because sometimes they'll just be amazing, but the artists that they get to do the covers and the artists that get to do the interiors, they just don't design logos. So the writer will often attempt to make a logo themselves, which I don't recommend. And so I usually end up redoing a lot of logos, which is great. I've designed well over 1,000 logos and so far in my career, so that's not an issue for me. I don't mind doing it. And you know, there's just little things where I get to kind of like call up artists and be like, what were you going for on this panel? What if we change the lighting on this, the colors, things like that. So that is very much what I do with SourcePoint specifically, is I get very integrated into the project management. And then being CCO, so we have a larger company that SourcePoint is now part of a conglomerate. It's called Oxeye Media. And in the Oxeye Media corporate lineup, I am the CCO. And that means I'm the CCO of all 3 brands that we currently have under our umbrella. And that is SourcePoint Press, our books and comics division, and then Deepwater Games, our board game division, and then N3, which is our kind of board game accessories and art-driven section, where we do big like high quality play mats and desk mats and things like that. And we also sell large framed pieces of artwork you can hang in your home. And that mostly ends up becoming like a general overall, I get, you know, kind of a say in our marketing direction. I work with our marketing team, and also mostly it means I handle our production. So I'm like the official production manager over at Deepwater Games, where I work with Factory on all the technical stuff on making the games and what's going to work. I'm the guy who's sitting there measuring the insides of the box and make sure that everything's going to fit in it when it's done, you know, stuff like that. You know, I've like sketches of all these different like wells and measurements and stuff. And I actually have a little bit of a CAD background too. Right before I got my college degree, I got a manual drafting certificate and a CAD operating certificate. And that stuff has actually come in handy. I never thought I would use it because I had no interest in it, but somehow it ended up coming in handy when it came time for laying out patterns for fashion design and to product design for packaging and things like that. So I get to do all the weird math and stuff too, for calculating thicknesses of paper stocks and caliper of cards. It's not for everybody, but I'm lucky that I have that brain where I can go technical and artistic and be able to kind of juggle all those positions in one.
Your board gaming section, when did that start up?
Gotta go back in my timeline in my brain. It's still fairly new. Let's see. The pandemic is such a weird time to live because it's like this big black hole in time. And I'm like, did that year happen? I don't remember. I guess
I understand. Yeah.
Would be a little over 2 years now.
Okay.
And we have just skyrocketed in that time with a full line of games. And we have games that we've developed in-house. Here's part of the cool thing about running both a board game company and a comic book company. There are phenomenal board game companies in the industry, and there are phenomenal comic book companies in the industry.
Yes.
And technically, those companies should all be competition for us, right?
Yes.
But because we have another division that those companies each don't do, we get to partner with them. Instead of being competitors, we get to be friends. So here's a great example. Cephalofair Games, they publish the #1 hit board game, tabletop game in the industry right now. It's called Gloomhaven. It comes in a giant box. It's like $150, and it takes like 70 hours to play.
Mhm.
And it's wildly popular. At Deepwater Games, we can't really compete with that. But what we can do is we can shift over to SourcePoint Press, shake their hand and say, would you guys be interested in a Gloomhaven comic book? And we did. We put out a Gloomhaven comic book, and it was a wild success. And now we get to do more, but we get to continue to partner with them. So instead of considering them a competitor in the game industry, we consider them a friend in the comic industry. And then on the other side of that, we get to do the other way around too. So Rat Queens is one of the most beloved Image Comics titles in the world. We're all huge fans of it. And because you would consider Image to be a competitor of SourcePoint Press, instead they get to become a partner of Deepwater Games. And now Deepwater Games is developing, we're hard deep into it this week, in fact, developing the Rat Queens board game, which is going to be in Kickstarter this summer. It's such a cool, unique position to be in, where we get to to cross over these platforms and work with our so-called competition. So yeah, in a couple of years' time, we've created games in-house. We've worked with licenses to develop games for them. We've taken some SourcePoint Press properties and developed games for that as well, such as Franklin and Ghost is getting a card game that we've developed. We've done the opposite. We've taken games that we're publishing called Claim, and we've shifted that over into a comic book series. And we've also localized games that are only available previously in other countries. For example, Asia has a phenomenal game market, and they have just very cool games, and a lot of the gameplay types are different from the mechanics that we're used to playing in regular board games in America. So one of the first things we were able to do was we partnered with Emperor S4, and we took all these phenomenal games that had already been distributed all across Asia, and we brought them over here and did all fresh translations, tweaked the mechanics only enough to make them kind of relatable and understandable for a Western audience. And we've seen great success in it. And it's something that we really enjoy doing too, is the idea of thinking that like we can kind of make the world that much smaller and kind of like unite us a little bit more by spreading some of that creativity like around the globe. So we're just as excited as taking on other people's projects as we are creating our own.
That's pretty cool. So I know your board games, I'm sure you guys sell them in local comic shops. Are they available, and on your website, are they available at like the big box stores or any, like Walmart or Target?
That's a great question. So our games are currently available through 20 different game distributors. So unlike comic books, game distribution is all sorts of companies out there. Comics pretty much has one.
Yes, yeah.
But our games are readily available for most like hobby stores to be able to order at any given moment. As far as big box stores, we're getting closer. We have some interest in some big box stores and some of our new games that we're really excited about. We're trying to make our stuff really accessible, and types of games where people who are new to gaming can jump in and learn how to play it pretty quick and enjoy it. And people who are hardcore gamers who do this every day, who don't have time for something simple. They really want something that has strategy, that gets a fresh playthrough every single time they play it. We try to do a balance between those two, and that has been really appealing to a lot of the bigger stores. So Barnes and Noble, they've been very great to work with. They've been so excited about our game Welcome To. So Welcome To, also called Welcome To Your Perfect Home, is like a flip and fill game about designing neighborhoods. It sounds dry, but trust me, it is so much fun. It's won over a dozen awards now. It's been carried in several countries, and Barnes and Noble has been keeping it in stock all the time on their shelves. And we have been doing these little expansion packs that we've been making. We primarily sell them, or used to sell them, at conventions, or back when conventions were still a thing. Yes. And Barnes and Noble was like, we would really love to be interested in doing something exclusive. So we packaged together this exclusive expansion pack where you get 4 different expansions in one box. And there is no better feeling than walking into Barnes and Noble and seeing it sitting on the shelf. It's so exciting. I'll never get used to it. Just be like, I remember like designing this box, things like that. And we're really, really hoping that we see over the next couple of years a bigger interest in the big box stores. And it's there. It's just at least it's kind of take a little bit of time. But we're very, very excited of what we've done so far. And we have some sleeper hits that are coming. Oh man, I'm so excited. Some I can talk about, some I can't. But one of the things about working here is that we have all these awesome artistic people here, and part of the job is, hey, you got to stay late tonight because you're going to test this board game for the next 2 hours. So, we'll all drop all of our, business stuff, and we'll sit around and just play board games together. And because, these things have to be played about 100 times before we'll be okay with putting that final rule book together. We have to really look at how well everything works. And it's one of the fun parts of the job that I imagine most people would enjoy doing.
Yes. That is great. Sorry, Josh, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to shift back the focus to the comics. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Drew is asking for aspiring new creators, artists, or writers. What is your submission process?
So this is great. I actually have a lot of great advice for people who are looking to submit to smaller publishers. First, I want people to understand what types of publishing there are. So that'll really affect the way that you submit and who you submit to. And I want to see everybody get their voice. So even if I think that it won't be a good fit for us, I always recommend another publisher that I think would be a good fit. So a lot of people who are new to comics or new to creating comics, they think in terms of Marvel and DC.
Yes.
We get a lot of people who call us up and say, will you hire me to write your story? Or will you hire me to draw your story? And I have to remind them, Marvel and DC do not technically publish comics. They create a product line. It's very different. You can't call up Marvel and say, I have a comic book here. Would you like to publish it? They don't do that. They create in-house products. It's drastically different than a publishing company. Like you couldn't call, Simon and Schuster and say, I would like you to hire me to write a book. Like they don't. They would say, how about you send us your book? It's a very different. So comics has this big misconception that businesses run the way Marvel and DC do, when in reality, even anything outside of Marvel and DC, that style of business is only a fraction of the books on the market, and those are the licensed ones, like Power Rangers and Transformers. And there are companies like IDW that do a hybrid model. That they focus on a lot of licenses, which means they do develop in-house properties and they hire people to work on those. And then they also publish other people's work. And then you look at Image. Image Comics is 100% creator-owned comic books. That is the same way that small grassroots companies that became legends like Caliber Comics are. They publish other people's work. That means that a lot of the creative side of things is tasked to the creative team. And that does mean that whatever cost that entails is often put on the doorstep of the creative team. And in the publishing side and distributing side and printing side is handled by the publisher. So a lot of people end up in our submissions asking for jobs, and it's just very rare. Like, yes, we do hire people freelance to work on books that we create in-house, but it's very rare. Most times books come to us with their creative teams assembled, and then we work with them to help guide them through the rest of their creative process, and then we take over from that point. And it always remains a partnership to the very end. So keep that in mind. If you want to start comics, you may have an upfront investment, and then you will essentially be hoping that you have partnered with the right publishing company that will help you regain your investment back through the sales and the royalties. So yeah, if it takes you 5 years to finish your graphic novel, take your time, just do it right. If you've got to pay for 1 page a month to an artist that you absolutely love and adore, do it. Just keep in mind like that it may sell 1,000 copies, and by the time you break down costs and marketing and royalties, and you may not make your money back. Like that is a real possibility in comics. And we may not either. that happens. We're in the hole on things, it's always a risk. we cannot always predict what sales are going to be. Yes. So one of the things we try to do is we try to really, really work on picking submissions that will fit in our lineup, mm-hmm. will sell to our existing audience without mm-hmm. giving them the same thing again, yes. Without letting it compete with another title that may be too similar. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when people come to us and they say, I have the perfect book for you, I mean, it has source point written all over it. It's so similar to what you guys are already publishing. Sometimes we have to say no and say it's too similar to what we're already publishing.
Yes.
We don't disagree, and it's a beautiful book and we absolutely love it. But to be honest, we just signed something like that, so they don't always know. They only see what's in stores now. Yes. We have publications lined up through 2022. So we know what's coming. So don't get disheartened when you get a rejection. There's so many reasons, and it's not always about the quality of your work. Mm-hmm. So back to the process, we have you can go to our website, and this is, I can't stress this enough. This is the only way to do this right now. This used to be very much a come to the booth and schmooze kind of thing. It's not like that anymore. You have to take the right steps to be put into our process at all, to be considered at all. There's no backdoor deals. So you come to our website and we have a submissions tab. You go onto the site and you pitch us your idea. You tell us how far you are so far. And this could be as close as, we have a lot of pets in the office. This could be as close as we have a finished miniseries all the way through done. It's ready to go. Or this could be, we have a script and we have an artist lined up and we don't have any art yet. So anywhere within that range is okay to pitch. We will listen. I can say that we can't always give you a contract based on an idea. Unfortunately, that's never enough. We will tell you what we think of your idea. We'll get back to you. But in the end, try to have something done that you can show us so that we can start connecting the visuals, the style, and then something we can read. If you've only got 8 pages of your first issue finished, great. Send us that and the script so we can kind of read through and see where it's going. Yes. And then on top of that, send us, you don't have to break down every word of every issue in the series, but send us an outline of where it's going and for how long. How many issues is it going to be? Yes. Exactly what genre and target audience you're going for. Say this is for fans of this other book. That really helps us get in your mind and not have to make any assumptions about your work and what your intentions are. And then from there, the best thing you can do is just give us a little blurb about each issue, and most importantly, a timeline for when realistically. Don't be afraid to say this is going to take a while. Just give realistic dates of when you actually think that you will be done with these issues one at a time. Because what we end up happening is people will spend a year on issue 1, and then they will promise us that issue 2 can be done in 30 days. And we'll solicit it and we'll put it into the publication schedule. And once those solicitations go to Diamond, that's endgame. You have to meet the deadlines now. So it's really scary. And they're like, oh my, we can't do this as fast as we thought. So it's really important that you give us a timeline. And if there is no set timeline that you can give us, we're just less likely to be able to look at it seriously, because we need to look at, based on your timeline, where it would fit in our schedule. And and sometimes it may not, it can't happen in fall of 2022. We're booked. So if that's the timeline that you ended up giving us, we may have to adjust. Or maybe we have a book that's too similar. So for example, we do a comic book called Hank Steiner, and that is about a Frankenstein's monster noir detective who is looking into serial killer monster murders. And it's really fun, and it's got a great audience. It's definitely a Frankenstein's monster kind of story. Does that mean that we would never publish another Frankenstein's monster book? No, of course not. We love that sort of horror, and we love monster stories. We will gladly publish your Frankenstein story. But we wouldn't want them to be published at the same time. Yes. We wouldn't want them to be published one after the other. We want a little breathing room between the two. So no, we have that to calculate on our end. So and the creators don't. They wouldn't even know. So come fill out our form on our site. If you don't hear from us for a while, we are okay with you tagging us and saying, hey, what's going on? And we'll be open and honest. So we're very transparent about the process. It does take a while. To give you an example, right now we have 200, a little over 200 submissions that have been vetted, that are good, and that we have to actually have a deep dive conversation about. Out of those 200, we're probably going to take about 12. So it's the next step is very labor intensive, and it requires about 5 of us. And so it's something we do once a month. And then the little bits along the way are just checking to make sure that it's honestly even publishable. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is a Square book and we've had no success with Square books. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to say no, or this is definitely not the right book for our audience. This is a great book. You're just gonna have more success somewhere else. Things like that. Very rarely do we have to go back and say, you're not there yet, keep working. So don't worry about getting your heart broken by a rejection. Just keep trying. That's a big one.
Okay. Well, Josh, thank you for answering that question. I'm just looking at our time. Are we, because I know I told you in my emails, we'll keep it to an hour. Are you okay if we go a little over, or?
I'm okay with you if you are. Sorry, I'm so long-winded. I'll
no, Josh, no, it's great. I mean, because I'm kind of also going down rabbit holes. You're talking about your board game sections. Like, I want to talk about that. Just touch on that and so forth. Sorry. I'm fine with that. So I just wanted to make sure that you're okay, because I'm going to be honest with you, you're working. You're on the clock right now. It's okay. But if you need to go, let me know so I can start wrapping things up.
Sure. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, a question off the cuff. Was that your dog that just popped in?
That was our president's dog. His name is Peanut. He's the big fluffy one. I have one too. He was over here sleeping right now.
Okay.
Come here.
Sorry, guys. Josh is. I know this is all audio. Oh yeah, he's out.
This is Ozzy Pawsborn, the Prince of Barkness. He's a good boy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for showing. German Shepherd, right?
He is. He came from a rescue shelter who actually does not know what breed he is.
Okay.
They have guesses. He's very small. He stays that size, so he's much smaller than a German Shepherd. But he has the same markings as a German Shepherd. Strangely, they think that he is based on some of his chest shape and his tail. They think he's part pug and part rat terrier, maybe something else. They're not sure.
So again, I'm sorry. The name of your dog again?
His name is Ozzy Pawsborn, the Prince of Barkness. He recently got his first game credit in our new game, 7 Summits. He was in the rule book.
Oh, that's pretty cool. All right. Sorry, I'm going to get back, Josh. North Point Press, as I told you in my email, this is a real blind spot for me. What kind of genre comics do you guys publish? If you can go over that.
When we first started, we were really big on crime noir comics and horror.
Okay.
And since then, and we continue to love those genres, and we also really love like pulpy stuff, just old school style pulp, and then from there we kind of gone on to do science fiction, and we had a lot of success with titles like Salvagers, which is a really sci-fi heavy comic book, and then we continue to be what I consider to be a leader in horror in comics. To this day, we take that very seriously. But we've also extended into fantasy, and with titles like Ogre, which formed into this whole like fantasy ogre verse that is going to a 3rd volume actually coming up. And we are starting to kind of experiment with some kind of hybrid crossover genres. We were really excited about our first LGBTQ focused book that's actually in previews right now. It's called 20 Fists. It's kind of like it's like a romance. It's a romance comic that's kind of mixed with a fighting, like a gang fighting story akin to the Warriors. So it's a very cool mashup of genres. We've never really tackled romance, so really this is a great way for us to step into an LGBTQ romance comic by also having it be this like fist fight action story.
Yes.
And we're excited to kind of keep expanding on that. Our success in fantasy has allowed us to take bigger steps in doing things like the Gloomhaven comic and taking on a very heavily loved and established fantasy universe and being able to do it justice.
Mhm.
And we're just really excited at this point to have so many cool creators under our belt that we can kind of start trying new things and play to each of their strengths.
Mhm. Let's see. Um, what was your guys? What were some of your top sellers? Your best titles?
Oh, so Dead End Kids was a murder mystery written by Frank Gogol.
Okay.
And it was a mini series that none of us saw coming. It was such a huge hit and is so loved by the fans and readers. We just were blown away by it that we decided to do, Frank decided to do a follow-up called Dead End Kids, The Suburban Job, which takes place
Mhm.
a little bit later in time with a different group of kids. And it's another kind of, it's more like a heist crime story. And it also deals, those are also very personal stories that deal with um, very realistic struggles. It's very slice of life, but
Mhm.
in a unique setting. And we've seen great success with that as well. Frank has just been a great creator. His series No Heroin, which is a very serious, dark story about drug addiction mixed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer style of supernatural story. And The Rejected was, I'd say, probably our first huge hit. It was a graphic novel that is very much like a psychological horror as well as a very realistic horror about demons and giving people who are in a place of they're feeling weak or alone and giving them this sense of strength and family, but at a cost. It's very dark and very serious. And it was so, I remember the first day that it took off.
Mhm.
Our web store sales, it was late at night and I get a phone call from Travis. He's like, "Are you seeing this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think something's wrong with our web store.
Uh-huh.
We're getting almost an order a minute." And we'd never seen anything like that. And I was like, are we being hacked? How is this? He's like, I don't understand if it's an error. Why is money being deposited into our bank account? We were so confused. We're like, who are all these people buying this graphic novel? And we sold out so quickly that we had to go to a second printing, and that sold out in 1 week. And we were just blown away. So that went on to do 2 more graphic novels, and right now it's being collected into a big omnibus with a bunch of bonus content. And then Salvagers, we saw a lot of success with. That is a very cool established sci-fi universe written by Bob Sally. Bob has been just a home run for us as well. He's just a phenomenal writer who tends to work with really great people. So he partnered with Sean Daly on Ogre, which led into a second volume called Ogres. And Sean Daly is an artist a Canadian artist we're very, very fond of. He partnered with Easton DeVerna, another phenomenal writer, and did a story called Samurai Grandpa. And all of these have just been key titles for us at SourcePoint Press. And what's great about this is each one is a hit, and each one is a step into trying something new, genre-wise. So every time we tried to step outside of our box, our readers really showed up for us. And that has just kind of reconfirmed like that we can do this and that it's okay to take these risks sometimes and try new things, especially when you have great creators behind you, you know? I'd say that's probably our first round of hits. And for any of our creators who are listening, and if I didn't mention your book, I apologize right now. You know, I love all of you.
And I'm going to throw this in because it was just a last minute question. It was like popped in my head. So that's why I asked Josh. So
Oh, I have to give one shout out to Monstrous. Monstrous is like our core. It's like a steampunk world full of like Universal Monster style action. It's basically like steampunk robots fighting monsters. That has become our longest running series. It's been just a fan favorite. I can't believe that it's still going. Greg Wright, the writer, he's gone on to write a ton of other things for us, like Holliston, Claim, and Wild Bullets, and all these great stories. But Monstrous it has really been the thread of storyline that has been here since the beginning and continues to keep going. So big shout out to that book too.
Okay. We've talked about past successes. What series should our listeners look forward to from SourcePoint Press?
So right now in previews, for those who don't know, because this is such an important thing for small publishers, the way the industry works for small publishers is stores have to buy things 2 months before they come out. And that is their chance. They have like a 3-week window to decide if they're going to buy it or not. After that 3-week window is over, those small publishers, they're only going to print a little bit more than whatever was ordered because we can't afford to do otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that means pre-ordering at your local comic shop is the only way to keep small publishers alive. Mm-hmm. So knowing what's coming out a couple months from now is really important to helping out small publishers. So a lot of our focus and what we're promoting is we're never promoting just what's coming out this month. We're always promoting what's available to pre-order. So right now in previews is the trade paperback collected edition of Volume 1 of Broken Gargoyles. If you missed Broken Gargoyles, it was a huge fan favorite new series written by Bob Sally. And the trade paperback collected edition is the time to jump on. So if you tell your local comic shop, pick that up for me, put it on my pull list, then you'll be prepared for Volume 2, which is going to be starting very soon. And the trade paperback collect edition actually features a painting on the cover by me that was previously only available on a very rare variant of issue 1. So if you liked that piece of art and you couldn't get your hands on it, now's a chance to. Another thing that's in previews right now is Classic Pulp Ghosts. So Classic Pulp is a series of one-shot collections of short stories from the 40s. And that's something that I do. It's like a pet project of mine. Basically, what I do is I curate comic content from the 40s that is no longer available to read to anybody. So it's not published anymore. The companies are long gone. Mm-hmm. And the remaining copies of this work are either heavily damaged or extremely rare. And if you owned one, you probably wouldn't read it. You'd probably encase it in plastic. So these stories don't get to be read anymore. So what I do is I partner with people from all over to try to get high-res scans of original pages of remaining copies. And oftentimes this means they're very damaged. So I spend a lot of time undoing water damage, taking away tears, sometimes removing pen marks or crayon. And I try to restore every single piece of every single page and even repaint them to look the same way they did the first day they were printed, so that what you have in your hand is the closest thing to a time machine you can get. And part of what I do in that process is I do a lot of deep dive research on crediting the original teams, because in the 40s, they often didn't get credits in writing. Sometimes just the writer would, sometimes not, the artist would, and vice versa. Sometimes nobody would get credit. Mm-hmm. So I go as far as contacting like grandchildren and great-grandchildren to try to confirm, is this I think your grandfather did this. Like, can you confirm in any way? Here's my reasons for thinking so. And then usually in every issue, there's a page in the beginning where I talk about like what credits I was able to find and then which ones are still unknown. And I always encourage people, if they think they know who worked on this story, to please contact me. So for future printings, we can put some of those theories in there. So that's just kind of like a fun one. So this month's one that's coming out in 2 months, it's available pre-order now, is all about ghosts. It's all ghost stories. It's really fun. Other than that, I would say the big one to really keep your eye on is Yuki versus Panda #1 is coming. It's a very popular series in Canada that has just been blowing up in the underground, but has never been distributed on a mass level, and has now come to Source Point Press. So we are starting back over with issue 1, and we're offering it up to several countries, and we're really excited. It's a very fun, action-packed story about an epic battle between a girl and a panda bear who escaped from the zoo and is on a mission of revenge because she bit off part of his ear as a child at the zoo. It's a wild and crazy and really fun story. Keep an eye out in the media, because there's going to be the Yuki versus Panda announcement is going to be hitting anytime. So you'll be seeing comic news media start talking about it.
Okay.
And then Cult of Dracula #3 is available to pre-order. So what's weird about the timeline is stores are pre-ordering #3 and they haven't even put #1 on the shelf yet. Mm-hmm. So it really helps when you say, how many, like ask your local comic shop. Nobody wants to put you on the hook for very long. At Source Point, we don't have a lot of ongoing series going on. So we want to keep you in small chunks. So we'll give you 5 issues and then take a break. And if you really loved it, we'll bring you another volume. So you can comfortably go to your local comic book shop and say, put Cult of Dracula on my pull list. Mm-hmm. And I promise you, you won't be paying us $4 every month for the rest of your life. Yeah. This is not Batman. So you're only in for like $20 at the end of the day. It's not too bad, I promise. So please tell them the whole series on your pull list. Don't just say, I want issue 1, because they have to make a decision on issue 2 and 3 before they even see the sales on issue 1. So guaranteeing those sales helps them have the confidence to pre-order. So right now, issue 1 of Cult of Dracula will hit last Wednesday of this month.
Okay.
And then issue 3 is available to pre-order now. It's the perfect time to say, I would like issues 1, 2, and 3 at your local shop. That series is going to be probably the biggest thing we do this year. We're so excited about it. And luckily, so far the readers have been too, and the pre-orders we saw in number 1 were just amazing. So we're really grateful.
Okay.
I think that's most of the plugs I want to give there.
Okay. And I'm going to say, and during our conversation, if any other comic series pops up, just shout it out. Don't worry. Let's see. Are there any new writers or artists, as we readers should keep an eye out on?
Oh, that's a great question. So Puis Calzada, he is a fantastic horror illustrator. He's done a lot of like horror movie T-shirts and things like that. And he's done some great work in comics. So a dear friend of ours, Adam Green, he's a film director and writer. He has a series of movies called Hatchet. There's Hatchet 1, 2, Hatchet 3, and then Victor Crowley is the name of the 4th movie. NECA just released an amazing action figure of his creation. This here, I know you guys can't see it, but I have some awesome action figures up here in my office of our friend Adam's character from his movies. So that has a comic book series. We do not publish it. It's actually published by American Mythology. Yes. But Puis Calzada is one of the artists who worked on that comic book series. And we do one of Adam's other properties called Holliston. We do the comic book series for that. Puis is somebody I've admired for a long time. Him and I kind of came up in the illustrating gigs, ranks back in the day, doing like sketch cards and things together, always working on the same projects for the same companies and things like that. And I've always wanted to pull him into comics at Source Point. And we finally got a break in his very busy schedule, and he is taking over the art for Cult of Dracula. He is awesome. And I really, really think that he's going to just become one of the next hottest artists. I really say, please keep an eye on him and what he's doing. He'll be taking over on issue 3 of Cult of Dracula, and I just know that he's gonna kill it. The pages I've seen so far are gorgeous. So yeah, keep an eye out on him. Frankie White and Kat Bowman are the creative team behind 20 Fists. And that is such a cool, unique comic. As I mentioned earlier, it's kind of our first LGBTQ romance story, and at the same time as this kind of gritty gang war action. And I think they are both just phenomenal, and they're kind of newcomers to the scene, but they're both very talented and have written and drawn other things. And I just cannot wait to see what they come up with next. I'm such a huge fan already. So definitely try out 20 Fists and just check out those guys and keep an eye on them, because they're going to be doing just great things. And I would say some other ones that are kind of going a little unsung. Well, I shouldn't say unsung. It depends on where you're from. If you're from the Midwest, you're probably super familiar with Dan Doherty. He does a series for us called Touching Evil. But if you're outside the Midwest, you may be less familiar. I recommend checking out Dan Doherty as a human being. Touching Evil is by far one of our favorite comic series. It's also one of our longest running. It's on issue 14 right now, and it's still just killing it. It's doing great. But anybody who's into comic strips, he has a syndicated comic strip called Beardo, and it ran for years. And long before I ever got to work with Dan in comics, I was a huge fan of that comic strip. It was one of my favorites. For me, it's right up there with Calvin and Hobbes and Get Fuzzy. And I really highly recommend checking him and his work out. And always, not just the stuff we publish, anything he does is great. He has a new series right now that just finished up the 2nd volume on Kickstarter called Floppy Cop. And Floppy Cop, I remember the day he pitched it to us. My first thought was, who is going to buy this? I don't know the target audience. It's a comedy buddy cop series about an officer who is literally missing a spine. So when he runs, his head is like bouncing off the ground because he's bending and flopping all over the place. It is the weirdest book I've ever read, and it is also one of the funniest stories. I've never enjoyed a comic book so much. And that's the biggest thing we get back from people who buy that. They're just like, this is weird. I'm going to try it out. That's usually how it sells. I got to see what this is all about. They laugh so hard out loud reading a comic book, which never really happens. You know, people are clever, but like this is new. And that's the first thing they say. Like, I haven't had so much fun reading a comic book in my life. And so I highly just keep an eye on him because he does comedy very well. And he also does serious stories like Touching Evil very well.
Okay.
So he's phenomenal. And he has a good eye for other talents too. So anybody he partners with tends to be great. Seth DeMoose, so he's an artist and a writer. And he writes and does art for Touching Evil, but for Floppy Cop, he got Seth DeMoose to come in for art, who has more of a cartoony style than he does and just knocks it out of the park. So definitely keep an eye out for him.
I have to check that out. That sounds great. All right. I'm going to ask you a fun question before I'm going to start wrapping up this part of our interview. Who, either currently or legendary artist and writer, would you like to work with at Source Point Press on a limited series or graphic novel? Which creators, you know?
So for me, this is, you would think it would be a really difficult question because I just have so many people that I love and appreciate, but there are a couple names that I've always been huge fans of and always thought that they were just outside of our reach, right? Like I'm not aiming for you know, huge legends. Like I don't necessarily need like Jim Steranko to come do a series for us or anything, but just people that I'm personally a really big fan of. Yeah. And I'm so lucky to say that those two that have always been in the back of my brain since day one of Source Point have now both done work for us. One is Ben Templesmith, and the other is Francesco Francavilla. And so far, the only thing that both of them have done for us now are covers, and they're gorgeous covers, and I love them. So one of these days, I would say my next goal is to get one of them on interior art for probably like a 3 or 4 issue mini series. I think that would be so cool.
Okay. I'm just going to ask, what about any writers?
I would say one of the big writers who's kind of been a legend and also like a behind the scenes master in the industry, his name is Andy Schmidt. He was a senior editor at Marvel. And for those who don't know, editors at Marvel do so much more than just edit a script. They're not there to check your grammar and typos. They are creating the universe and guiding you through it. So every big, huge crossover Marvel event, while Andy was there, was his doing. And you would never really know that by reading credits in the comics. So for example, like a lot of the stuff that Andy was responsible for at Marvel went on to become the movie adaptations that we know and love today. For example, the new iteration of what Guardians of the Galaxy is, like that lineup and those characters. While Andy wasn't writing those series, he was the reason why that existed. And the movies are based off of his concept for what Guardians of the Galaxy should be. Civil War was another thing he was heavily involved in. When he left Marvel, he went to IDW, where he continued to both write and edit, and then eventually left IDW to run his own comic book school called Comics Experience. We all thought it would be phenomenal to work with Andy Schmidt someday. And I'm very, very proud and lucky to say that we did. We partnered with Comics Experience and have become dear, great friends with Andy. And we work with him on a regular basis. And we're lucky enough to get him to write a series for us called Achilles Incorporated. And it's an awesome superhero series that it takes a very new twist on superheroes. And coming from the guy who is a legend in superhero stories. Yes. So while we don't usually do them, I can't think of a better person to write them. So I am proud to say that the kind of one of the people who has already been a goal for us, we were able to obtain it. So we did it.
That's cool. That's great. Okay. So my next question is from Drew. This is where we're going to get a little bit more serious about. But Drew asked, where do you see the comic industry going in 2021?
So this is such a good question. There's a very interesting shift, and a lot of this is related to the way people shop. And then the way people shop has been evolving for a long time. But then in the past year, it started evolving a lot faster.
Okay.
Because of the pandemic, the way people are purchasing comics and the places people are purchasing comics has changed.
Yes.
And unfortunately for comic book stores, it has in part shifted away from them. For example, graphic novel sales have actually surpassed from booksellers have actually surpassed graphic novel sales from comic book shops.
Mm-hmm.
Comic book shops are still very much working on a month-to-month basis with single issues,
Mm-hmm.
and the trade paperback collected editions are not what is keeping their stores in business. They sell less of those at the shops, and those are now picking up speed rapidly with online booksellers and bigger box stores like Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm.
For better or worse, that is the direction that a lot of readers are going. And the reason for that is I think complex, I would say, but part of it is a binge reading culture. People, the way that they consume media has changed, and that kind of has crossed over into reading. So a lot of readers will sit out the series and just wait for the trade. Yes. And then when they get the trade, they don't necessarily drive to their local comic book shop to get it. And the pandemic has kind of increased that twofold. A lot of people are buying online, obviously. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do to kind of keep our titles moving, because what we're seeing a big decline in those graphic novel sales at comic book shops. While we have a good incline on single issues, graphic novel sales are more difficult. So what we did recently is we just announced the news last week that we've partnered with Simon & Schuster for global distribution. And this means that booksellers will be able to get our entire backlist of graphic novels and trade paperback collected editions, as well as everything going forward. We're actually planning out releases with them 8 months in advance now. And we're very excited to say that there's a likely chance that later this year you can walk into, when it's safe to, if you feel comfortable to, walk into a bookstore and see our graphic novels right alongside Marvel and DC's. And that's very exciting. It also means that as a publisher, we have a responsibility to the comic book stores to push more marketing in their direction, to help them understand their customers as best as they can and get them what they want. Because the last thing we want to do is see that this shift in media culture to be the end of the comic book store, right? Yeah. So luckily, a lot of comic book shops have actually adapted to this really well. Yeah. Some of them are having great success with selling through like Facebook Live auctions, and they're finding new ways to give recommendations to their customer base and even increase their customer base outside a 15-mile radius of their physical business by focusing on their online efforts more. And big kudos to those, because that shift was a necessary one. It wasn't one you wanted necessarily to do. It's something you had to do to survive. And for the most part, from what I've been watching and seeing, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely amazing. You guys are all killing it. I'm so proud of what retailers are able to survive right now. Part of what we did in this past year to make sure that we could do our part to help was we asked everyone who placed an online order on our personal web store to name their local comic book shop that they would like to support. And we sent, just no strings attached, money to them for every sale. So anything they bought on our web store, we pretended like it was purchased by that retailer, and we gave what would normally be their cut of the sale to them in just a simple PayPal, here's some money. Like, you didn't have to do anything for it, whatever the case. It was just our way of like saying, you can do both. You can support your local comic shop and continue to buy from us online. We also sent out 200 packages of graphic novels, physical ones, for free, no shipping charge, nothing, to comic book stores to sell or give away in contests or whatever they wanted to do with them. So we're talking $20 trade paperbacks, a box of them, 200 boxes. So we cleared out a big chunk of our warehouse and kind of helped, one, keep our titles relevant in what they're doing, but also give them some free product to experiment with if they wanted to try a Facebook sale or whatever they wanted to do with it. So yeah, it's an interesting shift. It's going to be a hard one. And our job is to try to be on top of all of it and all sides of it. And we're doing what we can.
Oh, that's really great. My last question for this section, where do you see Source Point Press either a year from now or 5 years from now?
So we have already dipped our toes into other forms of entertainment. So we, on top of doing, comics and board games, we had our first movie hit theaters, and for a limited theatrical appearance. It was based on one of our graphic novels called Rotten Tale, which is like an Easter horror story. And every holiday needs a horror movie, right? So why not an Easter horror movie? And we were super proud and excited to land Rotten Tale in theaters and then get a Blu-ray release. And we have had a lot of interest in our IP since then in film. And in the background, we have been working on a Franklin and Ghost animated series. And now I'm very proud to say that there's also a Yuki versus Panda animated series as well. And people can watch the trailer for that on our YouTube channel. And I imagine 5 years from now, there will be some sort of large scale other media release based on one of our IPs. That's really exciting. I would say 1 year from now, we will see us with better and bigger distribution. So you'll start seeing Source Point in more stores regularly, and Deepwater Games. So I would say Target, within 1 year, you might see like something of one of our comedies in something like a Target or a large big box store like that. And then 5 years from now, I would say you would probably see more movies and animated series. And that is absolutely terrifying. I know that it sounds like a huge, exciting, successful thing, but trust me, it's such a gamble. And there's so like the amount of money that goes into projects like that. I've just been sick to my stomach since day one going, how do we keep doing this? It keeps getting bigger. It's absolutely terrifying, but I'm so excited and so grateful to people who've allowed it to go this far.
Okay, so you said that you guys released a movie called, now correct me if I'm wrong, Rotten Tale.
Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because when I was looking up some information about Source Point Press, and I saw your Twitter feed. So correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a part-time actor? Because I thought I read that somewhere in your Twitter feed. I couldn't.
Yeah, if you go on IMDb and you look me up, Joshua Werner, I've done probably around like a dozen movies and TV shows. So I've done some acting and I've done some behind the scenes stuff too. Like I have a couple writing credits, and because I forgot to mention that I write too. In fact, I'm actually writing a comic book series that's like a secret project right now, and I'm very, very excited about. So I've done a little bit of writing in film, and then I've done some makeup effects and just little production credits here and there, kind of behind the scenes stuff. I've done storyboards and concept art, and yeah, I've acted in a lot of weird random stuff. Some of it I'm proud of. Some of it, I was in a movie that got a lot of awards. I was able to spend a really fun weekend at Sundance once and meet a lot of great people. And yeah, it's one of those things I'd only do if somebody asks me to. I don't go out and audition. If somebody asks me to audition for something because a casting director thinks that I'm a good fit, then I'll gladly show up. And if it's a small role that I can fit in my schedule, that's the big thing. I don't have time to take a few weeks off for a film anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something I used to do a lot. I used to do a lot of theater work, and I'm still, I still have fun with. I don't consider it work.
Let's see. So these, were you like, is it like these movie roles, was it more locally in Michigan, or did you like fly out to California?
No, they were mostly Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania productions. For a while, I was involved in some Michigan stuff at a time when Michigan had a really great tax credit for films. So for a little bit, there was a big booming industry in Michigan. And during that time, I was doing a lot of storyboard work and I was really heavily involved in the direction of Michigan as a state in the film industry. And in fact, when the new governor at the time had taken those tax credits away, I was on the news a lot, talking about what it was going to do and how it was going to impact some of the small businesses that had literally been created just to sustain the film industry, and how all of a sudden all of them were gone. Everybody packed up their bags. Transformers left the state, like just huge productions that were literally fueling the economy for Detroit. And Detroit is kind of my love. So I was very vocal in that. And you could see me complaining a lot on the news. And then after that, yeah, I did some work in Pennsylvania for a bit. There's a phenomenal filmmaker out there named John Lyons, who's keeping a lot of his work very Pennsylvania focused, and he's just doing incredible things right now. He has a new movie out with Adrienne Barbeau that's just looks phenomenal. I can't wait to see it. And yeah, I wish I could say I did work in LA. I have friends and family out there and stuff, and I'm always keeping up with what they're doing. But to be honest, I'm so busy. I don't think I could even want to try to make it work.
Now, I'm like I said again, I'm going off the cuff here, and like I said, I'm just looking for great positive outcomes. Who's the biggest celebrity you met, and that was so nice and so cool to work with, or just to even sit and talk for a little while?
I'm so lucky to have met so many people that are just heroes to me. I met George Romero before he passed away, and I was able to spend. This was actually met him at Sundance the year that he was debuting Diary of the Dead, yes. And I was there, and I saw the first screening of it, and I was able to attend an after party with him, and I spent a lot of time talking to him. And then a couple months later, he asked me to do some artwork on a Night of the Living Dead related project, which was phenomenal. So I got to do some Night of the Living Dead official, artwork for a trading card set and some other things. And then, yeah, it seemed like during that time, I was befriending a lot of the original cast members of Night of the Living Dead in Pennsylvania. So Bill Heinzman was just the best. He was the first zombie you see in Night of the Living Dead, and the first modern zombie in cinema history. So outside of like the voodoo zombies we got from like the 30s and 40s, Bill Heinzman, the cemetery zombie that approaches them in the cemetery at the beginning of the film, yes. He is the first zombie, real like zombie as the way that we see them in modern times. And he was one of the most wonderful human beings, and he loved his fans. I was able to spend a few weeks with him, and we went to the bars together. He drank me under the table, even at his old age. And then he passed away right as I was doing a painting of him. I was like, you don't get enough credit for being like kind of the face of this. We're so used to seeing the little girl who turns in the basement from the film being like the zombie face, but he returns throughout that movie multiple times, and he is like the leading zombie in the film. And I did this painting of him, and he died like the week I was doing it. And then it wasn't long after that George Romero himself passed away, and that guy he did it his way right up until the end. No one ever stayed as indie as George Romero. He always did his own productions with his own funding and his own team. And he continued to give large roles to no-name actors. And he pushed for diversity in films at a time when no one else did. I'm just always forever indebted to like what he has done for the horror genre. So that's always one that's going to stick with me. There's been countless though. Obviously, like I've been very lucky to meet a lot of kind of living legends of mine right before they died, and some of which that I missed out on, or I did conventions with, but I didn't take the time to talk to, and then 1 year later they were gone. And those are the ones that haunt me the most. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun at after parties and things, doing shots with Jason Momoa, doing karaoke with Tom Payne, who played Jesus in Walking Dead. It's nice to see those people like wind down after a long day of just kind of catering to the fans, and they just kind of come out of their shell and have some fun and loosen up with us, artists and writers. And it's always been a great time. I could talk endlessly.
All right, so this is the part I'm going to start wrapping up with fun questions. Sorry, that was a little off the cuff question I wanted to ask because of your acting background. I'm going to ask, do we still have time for a few more questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what was your best convention? Well, what's your best convention moment or moments?
I won't go into too much detail on it, but there's a very, very funny story that gets tossed around this office a lot about a very small convention that was doing it just had a bad turnout. So when that happens, a lot of times we get to leave our booths a little bit, stretch our legs, and kind of chat with other people.
Yes.
And we ended up in this very, very long conversation with Jim Steranko.
Oh.
And Steranko is just obviously he's a legend, and he's one of the last from that period of time. And I've been a big fan since I was a kid, and he gave me a really beautiful print of one of his paintings that he did for a pulp novel cover of The Shadow. I'm a huge fan of The Shadow. I grew up, my grandparents used to play the radio show at night when I was a kid all the time. So that was really cool, but mostly listening to that guy tell stories, wow, is it entertaining. He has so many stories about like being on the set of Indiana Jones and working with just total legends. A lot of people forget that he's kind of responsible for a lot of like iconic film things too, because he designed some of these characters and what they're meant to be like. Indiana Jones was based off of a painting that he did.
Yes.
And a lot of the visual direction was he was in charge of for that.
Yes.
One of my best convention moments was just love him or hate him. He is a character. Oh my gosh, is he a character? So I really enjoyed listening to his stories.
Yeah. No, but I know what you're saying, because I bought this Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't know if it was like a movie book, and it was one of those it was back in the 80s, like through one of those like either Fantagraphics or not Fantagraphics, Fangora or something like that. And I was flipping through it because I was a huge Raiders of the Lost Ark fan, and I see this painting and I'm like, this is great, and I'm like, Jim Steranko. It's like, yeah. But what was pretty cool about that painting was you see Indiana Jones, the fedora, the whip, and a cigarette out of his mouth. That was classic.
Definitely. In fact, he actually thought that Harrison Ford. He argued with some of the filmmakers. He thought Harrison Ford was a poor casting choice. He didn't think he was quite manly enough. He wanted somebody who was super intimidating and was less charming. Somebody you'd be kind of afraid of, because if you said the wrong thing, they'd punch you in the mouth. It's so fun to listen to him tell stories from that time period.
But no, because in that painting, it's like you see Indiana Jones. He's this huge guy, the barrel chest. It's kind of like almost like not Charlton Heston, but almost like a Charlton Heston physique,
Totally, yeah. It was almost a trope for those early, like pulpy men's magazines of like that guy just beating everybody up in the jungle. Like that was really the direction he wanted to take it.
Okay. Do you want to give a shout out to your favorite LCS? And then if you have more than one, that's fine. Just
mostly, I want to just say that Koi's Comics here in Saginaw, it is the comic shop that we're next door to, and we started off in the back room of, has grown to become one of the best comic book stores in America, and I have visited a lot of them.
Yes.
It's ran by Stephen Shar, who is a comic book artist himself, who is, he does artwork for us for our Holliston graphic novels, the Adam Green property that's also a television series on Shudder. He is a great artist in his own right, and he knows and loves comics so passionately and so deeply that he has put together just an incredible store. I highly recommend, if you don't live in Michigan, which most of you probably don't, you can check out their Facebook page, and they do constant live videos to do tours of the shop and just talk about comics. And I mean, he reads every single one of them. So like he's up to date on everything. He's a great person to meet and chat to. I highly recommend you check him out. So Koi's Comics in Saginaw, Michigan.
Okay. What's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite restaurant over there? Excuse me.
So I moved up here to live closer to the office last year. I moved right in the middle of the pandemic, which was a crazy time to move. And I had since then, because of the pandemic, I haven't gotten to experiment with very many of the restaurants. I have done like a lot of curbside pickup and takeout, and I'm still kind of finding my way around like the restaurants here. And I'm trying to hit up every single local one, because I'm very lucky that this is a city that has lots of great food. So far, I am still looking for a good Thai place, but I've found some really good Japanese food. I found some good Korean food, and I've found a lot of great Chinese and I'm trying to get Thai. And I've spent a lot of time in Asia. I filled a passport and had to get a second one because I'd filled it. It's during my fashion design days, I spent a lot of time in South Korea and various parts of China, and I just kind of fell in love with a lot of different food out there. So I'm continuing to find just the perfect Korean place, but I'm still experimenting here. I have a lot more food to eat before I can pick one.
Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so I'm gonna start Actually, before I continue on, you're still trying to look for your favorite Thai restaurant in your area. Let me ask you this then. What's your favorite Thai dish that you love?
Oh. I feel like whatever I'm going to say is going to sound incredibly American. Oh my gosh. I feel like I need to pull up a menu and pick something. Some of the local places from where I used to live had just incredible like Bangkok chicken recipes. They were doing something different with them, and I can't put my finger on what it was. I've tried to replicate it at home and never had success. So I suppose like finding a new replacement for Bangkok chicken at a Thai restaurant would be phenomenal, especially if it has a little bit of kick to it.
Okay.
I love trying out different spicy Thai dishes, but Thai is one that I feel like every time I go there, I want to try something new.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have a go-to per se, but I'm very open to experimentation, and I have a lot of regulars when it comes to Japanese. Like I love barbecued squid is like a personal favorite. So I love experimenting with squid dishes.
I have to say, I've never heard that one. And I live in Hawaii.
I'm also a huge fan of Korean, so like all types of like Korean barbecue. And so most recently, I just mastered doing bibimbap at home, and it's a complicated dish. There's so many different elements that all have to be cooked separately. I make a giant mess in the kitchen when I do bibimbap, but I also make a really good bulgogi. I found just the perfect marinade, and there's an Asian marketplace here in Saginaw, and I've become friends with the owner, and she helps me with my recipes. I go in with ideas and say, this is what I want to do, and she'll actually shop with me. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, okay. All right, Josh. I'm going to start wrapping it up, and I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. I know we are literally, this is, thank you for your time. Just thank you very much. Okay, so again, can you promote your social media platform and SourcePoint Press social media platform?
Yes, so you can find me personally at Joshua Frantic on Twitter and Instagram, and SourcePoint Press at SourcePoint Press on Instagram and Facebook, and Source PT Press on Twitter.
Okay, and then do you have any last words to our listeners?
Just that if you're looking for something new and you want to do some short miniseries or little graphic novels, like we have great price points for like lots of jumping on points to check out what we do at SourcePoint Press. And if your local comic shop doesn't currently carry it, it would mean the world to us to introduce them to us and ask them to pull out a copy of the previous catalog and see what's coming out from us, and pick something out and try it out.
All right, Josh. Again, Josh, thank you very much for your time. Again, like I said, I know this is going on for an hour and 45 minutes. Just thank you very much. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.